The preposition to is pretty simple, right? Come on, it's this little word. It means to. Or does it? There might be some things that seem strange to you, like to live is to love. Or what about to infinity and... No? Oh. Copyright. Sorry. Why do we say want to go? Why can't we just say go? And why does have to mean must? That doesn't make any sense. Clearly that's not logical, but it is. And in fact, why do we even say to do, to be, to go in the dictionary form, the basic form? Well, there is a reason. It's time to learn one of the most important prepositions for deeply understanding the English language and feeling it. It's time to learn the logic of the preposition to. Hi, I'm Josh, your American English guide, and let's just jump right into this. But before we start, if you have not seen the previous lessons in this course, I strongly recommend that you start there because these are made in a particular order. So, what is the logic of the preposition to? It's very simple. It is an end point. Now, a physical, concrete example of an end point, a destination. So I go to the beach, that is a destination. Or if I send a letter to you or an email to you, you are the recipient. You are the person who receives the letter or the email. So you are the end point where it goes to. Don't let the simple logic of the preposition fool you, because it can be used in very many ways. These are all the different groups of meaning for the preposition to. Today we will only be talking about the first 4 groups, which will help to start to build the feeling of how this preposition works, especially with group 4. And we will need this in order to fully understand part 2. Group 1. The key word or phrase for this group is general end point, often physical. We all went to the beach. The beach is the destination. However, be careful. The dictionary says that this use of the preposition to means in the direction of or towards a destination. As native speakers, it's natural to try to define the preposition to this way, but it's not completely accurate. The preposition toward means in the direction of an endpoint, but the preposition to means the specific endpoint itself. The preposition to implies a direction, but it's not about the direction. So if you go to the beach is your destination, endpoint. If you go toward the beach, you are currently going in the direction of where the beach is, but it's probably not your destination. Next, if he's mean, don't respond to him. The preposition to is very often used after the verb to respond. But why? The verb to respond means to give or send a response. So the response, which is a noun, goes to the person, and the person is the recipient of the response. It's like saying, I gave $1 to him, or I sent a letter to him. What's the answer to his question? This sentence is more abstract. The answer to a question means the answer goes to the question. In other words, the answer belongs to the question. It's almost like the question and answer are puzzle pieces that have to fit together. Think of it like this. Someone asks a question. That question is now floating in the air. Someone else answers the question. The answer is supposed to solve the question, so it goes into the air and meets the question. If the answer is correct, it solves or erases the question, and the question disappears. So you send the answer to the question, just like you send a letter to someone or like you go to the beach. The question is the destination or endpoint of the answer. The only difference is that the endpoint in this case is not physical. A note here about the prepositions to and of. I mentioned that the question and the answer are like puzzle pieces. The interesting thing is the logic of the prepositions to and of touch in this context. The last piece of the puzzle, the last piece to the puzzle. If we talk about puzzles specifically, these two prepositions can overlap and can be interchangeable. But if we just have the idea of puzzle pieces, then they usually just touch. So we do not say, what's the answer of his question? The logic definitely works, but unfortunately, English doesn't allow the preposition of to be used here. In this case, we're not looking at the word answer as a part or content. Remember, the preposition of shows the relationship of something to itself. The answer has its own content and the question has its own content. So we're talking about one piece going to the other piece, not that they are pieces of each other. They're separate individual pieces. Just like I can go to the beach, the answer goes to the question. $100 isn't much to a millionaire. The endpoint is a millionaire. If we change the endpoint to a homeless person, for example, then $100 is a lot. And we would say $100 is a lot to a homeless person. We're making an indirect comparison by specifically pointing to a particular part of the comparison. But we're only choosing one of them as the endpoint in our sentence. Now, the alternative to this sentence is $100 isn't much for a millionaire. This is one of the rare times that the prepositions for and to are completely interchangeable, so you can use either one, but the logic behind them is very different. If we use the preposition for, we're talking about the millionaire as a basis. Based on the millionaire's situation, $100 isn't much. Canada is to the north of the US. If we're in the US, which direction do we have to go in order to get to Canada? North. If the preposition to is about an endpoint, what's the endpoint? Is it the word Canada or is it the north? The endpoint in this sentence is the north, to the north. And the surface meaning in this case is definitely about a direction. However, remember that the logic of the preposition to is an end point, even if it has the surface meaning of direction. Here's the key. We cannot say Canada is to north of the US. You can simply say is north of the US. That's because the north is a location, and a location is an endpoint, not a direction. If we say Canada is north of the US, now we're talking about a direction. Next group. The key word or phrase in this group is a limit point. Limit point is a more specific word for endpoint, like a destination or a recipient. This group is like a subgroup of group 1. You can often apply the idea of a limit point to the sentences in group 1, but these sentences are specifically a limit point. For example, the snow was piled to the roof. Many English learners see this example and think that the pile starts on the roof. That's not what this means. The pile starts on the ground and the height of it reaches the same height as the bottom of the roof. If the roof is 10 feet above the ground, then the snow is piled 10 feet high. The point where the bottom of the roof starts is the end point of the measurement of the snow's height. Alternatives. The snow was piled up to the roof. The snow was piled as high as the roof. The snow was at the level of the roof. There's a close relationship between the prepositions to, which is an endpoint, and at, which is a specific point or bubble. To has the added feeling of a direction, but at is a description of a static point without direction. Next, the price could rise to $50. As demand rises, the price rises. Maybe it will go higher, but the person who says this thinks that $50 is the end point for how high the price might go. That's the limit point in this case. Notice the highest price, limit point. And our last example in this group. When giving directions, you can tell someone, go to the corner and turn right. We're still talking about an end point, but it's specifically a limit point. Why? Because you don't want to go to the corner and then stop. You want to go somewhere else, but in order to get there, first you have to go to the corner. Don't go past the corner, just to the corner, and then turn right and continue going to your destination. Corner limits you because you can't go forward anymore if you want to reach your destination. We have some alternatives here. Go straight until you reach the corner and turn right. Go up to the corner and turn right. Go down to the corner and turn right. In both of these sentences, we're not talking about an upward direction or a downward direction, although that could be the case. This particular point is very complicated, and we'll discuss it when we talk about the preposition down near the end of this course. Group 3. The keyword or phrase in this group is an endpoint in time. I work from Monday to Thursday. We're talking about a duration or a length of time. Other prepositions are also used to talk about a duration, but to and from are used together in order to emphasize the start point and the end point, not the time in between. I start work on Monday and I end work on Thursday. Next, every year we travel from June to August. In this sentence, August is the end point. It's the month when our traveling stops. Call me at 5 to 11, which means 5 minutes before 11 o'clock, which is 10:55. When telling time, we can use the preposition to with the meaning of before. We're talking about the specific time, 10:55. If you add 5 minutes, it will be 11. As we go forward in time, we're going to 11 o'clock. That's the specific endpoint in time. Group 4. The keyword or phrase for this group is infinitives, which means the dictionary form, like to be, to eat, to go. In order to completely understand this group, we need to look at the etymology or the history of words. Verbs in Old English, which is a very old language, were inflected. And that means that the conjugation, the changing of the verb itself, showed who was doing the action. Many modern languages still work this way. In Spanish, for example, the infinitive form of the verb to eat is comer. If you want to say I eat, you say como. The O ending means I. We know that in modern English, we can't usually do this. In Middle English, speakers started to use the preposition to for the infinitive form, and this changed the way that we use and conjugate verbs in English. This use of the preposition was based on the Old English use of the preposition to with the dative case. English does not have cases anymore, remember, but the dative case is something that some languages use to mark the indirect object. For example, I give it to him. Now, according to the online etymology dictionary, and probably every English teacher and English learning resource online or anywhere, this use of the preposition to make the dictionary form has no meaning, and it is just part of English grammar. However, you and I know that that is not true. We know that this was based on how Old English used the preposition to with the dative case, meaning indirect objects. But how is it that the logic or the feeling of the preposition to started applying to the infinitive form of verbs? The answer is in, again, the etymology, of course. First, it's important to know that one of the meanings of the Old English preposition to was in the direction of. Also, remember that the modern English preposition to includes the idea of in the direction of, but the preposition to is about the end point, not the direction. Now, to answer the question, why did this change happen? Well, for some reason, Middle English speakers started thinking about verbs as end points. Okay, so that might sound strange, but for example, in the dictionary, you will find the verb to see. What's happening here is that we have the word to pointing to the action of seeing. Seeing is a noun, right? We're pointing to a noun. This is exactly the same as saying I go to the store, except that's a physical location. It's the same with verbs. When we say to see, we're using the word to so that we can make the action see the end point. Because there's no other verb placed before to see, for example, want to see, it means that there's nothing particular pointing to the action of seeing. And because there's no other information after the verb, for example, to see the sky, the infinitive form is simply about seeing. This works because to see actually isn't the verb. The verb itself is see. When we conjugate the verb, we omit the word to and say, I see, you saw, he is seeing, etc., etc. The reason that we omit or drop the word to is because see isn't an endpoint anymore. That's how and why the Old English verb seon became to see. This is something that modern English speakers are completely unaware of because it's subconscious, like most of the logic and feeling. In fact, it's even possible to use the infinitive by itself in a sentence, though it won't work all the time. That's what this group is about. Our first example, to be honest, I don't care. Why can't we just say, be honest, I don't care? If we say that, be is a command, the imperative form, meaning that I'm telling you to be honest, and then I'm saying that I don't care. It doesn't make sense. I'm only telling you that I don't care because I want to tell the truth, which means that I have to be honest. We use the word to so that we can make be honest an end point. It's similar to saying for the purpose of being honest. Possible alternatives. If I'm being honest, I don't care. Honestly, I don't care. And our second example, to live is to love. Here, we're saying that one action or verb means another action or verb. They are equal. That's what is or to be means. According to this example, if you don't have love, you don't really have life. So without love, life is nothing. So we're pointing to the action of living and then pointing to the action of loving. We put the word is between them in order to say that the action of living is the same as the action of loving. We can actually look at this sentence as a short version of, in order to truly live, you have to love. Now that you've seen the basics of the logic of the preposition to, and now that we've started to build that feeling for the preposition, especially in group 4, it's time for part 2. And part 2 is where things are going to really start getting very, very interesting because we're going to be talking about things like why we say want to, have to. So make sure you don't miss that. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. Thank you so much for watching another English Hacks lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.